We already know that a variable is a place that stores data while the program is running, and it's able to be changed while the program is running. Now, a variable holds data, but it stores it as different types of data. So if we look at this example here, the first name of somebody is a string. It's a string of characters, in this case, Bob. Age is an integer, it's a whole number. Height, because it's got a decimal point, is a real number, and Python stores that as a float. We can also have Boolean logic values, which are true or false, for example, enjoys school, and is another string just at the end. And we know that in order for the computer to store them, they have to be turned into binary, so the computer needs to understand what type of data it is so that it can convert it to the correct format. And we did this last time. We did a little program that prints out the data type of each of the variables. So it looks at the variable, tells you what type it is, and it prints that on the screen. So let's give that a quick run. So let's go up to run the module, and we see the output here. It says it's a string, it's an integer, it's a float, it's a Boolean value, and it's a string again, which is exactly as we described them as we went through. So Python stores data in variables, and those variables have to be the correct data type for the type of data we're putting into the variable. So that's fine when we assign the values directly by using the name of the variable and putting equals and then the data in. But what about when we get the data directly from the keyboard? Well, let's do that quickly in the shell. We'll just do it one command at a time, which is why we're using the shell. I'm not writing a program. This is just to see what each line of code does one at a time. So let's create a variable. Let's just call it name, and I do equals. And to get them to type in a piece of data, we use the command input with 2 brackets, because this launches a little mini program, a little subroutine that takes the input from the keyboard and collects what it says, and then it can put it into wherever we want to, and in this case, the variable name. So let's press enter, and it's now flashing the cursor to say, type some data in. So let's type in, let's do Alice this time. So today I'm Alice, let's press enter, and now the name Alice should be in the variable name. So let's print that out. Print. Let's print name, and it outputs Alice because that's what I put in. We can also find out what the data type is. So let's just do type and name, and it will tell us what data type name is, and it says it's a string, which is what we would expect. Alice is a name, it's made up of text characters, so we expect it to be a string. But what about if I want a number? Let's do age equals input, and the 2 little brackets after the input. And once again, the cursor's flashing. It's waiting for me to type in the age. So let's put in age 14, and I press enter. And it's gone in, so let's do print, and print the age. And once again, it prints the 14 as we'd expect, because that's what we typed in. Now let's get the data type. Type of the variable name is, it's a string, which is interesting because a string is a bunch of characters, but we definitely typed in a number. But Python sees this as a string because it's come from the keyboard, and the keyboard is made up of lots of different characters, text and symbols and numbers, and Python takes all of those as ASCII character values. So it's not seeing the number 14, it's seeing the characters 1 and 4. So that gives us a problem. Say I wanted to do something with a number. So I wanted to add a number to a number. So ordinarily, just typing in one command at a time, I could do something like 14 plus 14, and it would give me the answer 28. And if I did something like num1 equals 5, I could do num1 plus 10, and it would give me the answer 15, because it's taken the value from the variable and added 10 to it. So it took the 5, added 10 to it, and it displays the answer. So what happens if we do that with age? Now remember, we've put the number 14 in age. Let's see what happens if I do age plus 5. Now it was 14. I want to add 5 to it, so I'd expect to get 19 as my answer. Let's see what we do get. It says an error, and it comes back with an error because you can't add a number to a string. You can't add numbers to text. It says I can't do maths with that. So this is our error, a type error. It can't add a string to an integer. 5 is an integer, and 14 in this case, because it went in as a string, is a string. So here's our problem. So we need to do something. We need to take the string and we need to convert it to, we call that casting. We need to cast the string into an integer. So we're going to convert the string into an integer. So let's do that. Now I'm going to do this in a new shell, so it's just nice and clear and easy to see. Let's use a new variable. Let's call it num1, and let's take in the input. But the only problem is, if we do that, the input goes in as a string. So before I ask for the input, I'm going to tell it what data type I want it to be. I want it to be an integer. So I'm going to type int, I open a bracket, and whatever is inside the bracket is what's going to be converted into an integer. Now we want to convert the input, so let's type input. And so it'll take the input from the keyboard, convert it into an integer, and then put it into the variable. So when I press enter, it's going to flash, it's going to wait for the number. So let's type in 12, and hopefully 12 has gone into the variable num1. Let's print and find out. And there it is. It's printed 12. Fabulous. So let's check the data type now. Let's go type and num1. And there it is. It is actually an integer. All's grand. And what I should now be able to do, because it's an integer, I should be able to do something like num1 plus 8. So 12 plus 8 should equal 20. It's worked fine. We're now able to use the numbers as numbers and do some maths with it and anything else we might want with that number. So an integer is one type of number we can have in Python. The other is a float. That's a real number. That's a number with a decimal point. And to convert that, or to cast a string into a float, we do something very similar. Let's do num2 equals, and this time we say what data type we want. We want float. And then the same thing with the brackets. Whatever is inside the brackets, it will convert into a float. So we want the input like that. And whatever input we do, it will turn into a floating point number. So it's now waiting for a number. So I can do something like 12.56. And there we are. It's gone in. Can I print it? Num2. I get that out. But is it a string? Let's find out. Let's do type. And num2. So it'll tell us the data type, and it is indeed telling us it is a float. It's a floating point number. It's exactly what we want it to be. So now we can use those as we want to in a program. Let's have a quick look. So let's take a little look at this program here. So it takes some input. It's going to ask us to enter a number, and it's going to put what we input, type on the keyboard, into this variable here. And then we're going to ask for another number, and we're going to put what they input into this variable here. We're then going to calculate the total, so num1 plus num2. We're going to assign that into the variable called total, and then we're going to output the total. We're going to print the answer is whatever the total actually is. So let's give that a quick run. So let's enter a number. Let's do some easy numbers here. Let's do 8. And let's enter another number. Let's do 4. So 8 plus 4 should be 12. Let's see. And it says the answer is 84. Which isn't right. So it's come out with 84, and we typed in 8 and 4. And what it's done is push the two things together. It's concatenated the two numbers. It's joined them together, and it's done that because num1 and num2 are both strings until we tell them that we actually want it to be something else. We want these as integers. So let's go int, open our bracket, put that around the input so it converts the input to an integer. Let's do the same here. Int, open the bracket, around the input, close the bracket. And that's all we need to change. Let's give it a run. Let's save it. And let's enter a number. Let's do the same thing, 8, and another number 4. And the answer this time is 12 because we've cast the strings, we've converted the strings into the integers so that we can actually do some maths with them. So there we are. That's how we take input of different data types and assign them to variables by converting them using either int or float.